Art is the reshaping of reality by man to present it in an understandable way. As the artist recreates the world around him, it is shaped by how he sees it and what he believes in. The Indian artist did not attempt to depict only the material reality around him. He wished to share the complete experience of the moment, not just the photographic presentation of the shapes around him. Beauty for the Indian artist has been a reflection of the glory of God. In fact, for the ancient artist, the experience of beauty, the ecstasy on seeing nature or art which is truly beautiful, has been considered as akin to Brahmanand or the final bliss. Join us on this journey into the heart of the Indian tradition of painting. Come with us to the gorge of the Baghora river, where Ajanta was created, to the courts of the Mughals and the Deccani Sultans. Journey with us through the deserts of Rajasthan and the icy lands of Ladakh and Lahore Spiti. In the verdant south and in the gentle hills of the north, experience the compassionate view of life that is enshrined in Indian painting.
In medieval times,
Through the centuries,
India was renowned
the
for
arid
its
land
fabled
of
wealth,
Rajasthan
its spices,
has been a place
and
where man
textiles.
has challenged adversity.
For many centuries, European nations
The hot winds blow
looked for
here
a sea route which could
and
connect
survival
them
itself
directly to
is
India.
a struggle.
This was finally discovered by Vasco da Gama from Portugal. He sailed around the Cape of Good Hope in 1498
In
and
the year
reached Calicut
1001,
on the coast of Kerala. Mahmud of Ghazni swooped through these arid plains. This began
to
a long
raid the
period of
riches of the
seafaring
famed
trade
Somnath
between
temple.
Europe and Asia. Gradually, this was only the first
Many of the lands
seven
on Asia
tomb raids were colonized
that he
by the
carried out
European powers in
for
the next
Portugal,
27
Spain,
years, France and England. Then on, the temples and ancient cultural heritage of Western India, even while the
remained
kingdom of
under
Vijayanagar
threat.
flourished in the mainland of the Deccan, a small and sunny land on the western coast
The
of India,
Rajputs who ruled in
began
Rajasthan
a very
consisted
different
of many
cultural
clans who
encounter.
were
Constantly in conflict with each other. Goa is a land
The lack
where
of
many
unity
cultures
between
met,
them
kept the doors open for invaders.
This
prosperous state has been
who
cherished
came and dominated
ruled by
the Indian
different
plains
kings over the
from the
centuries. 13th century onwards. Besides the rivalry with each other, the
Goa,
Rajputs,
which was a
also
part of the
remained
Vijayanagar
in
Empire,
conflict with the Afghans
for almost
and
100
other
years
years in Delhi till 1470, was conquered by the Portuguese in 1510. With the consolidation
For the
of
next
Mughal rule
450
under Akbar in the
years,
16th century,
the
distant land of Portugal,
a new era
ruled
dawned
Goa,
upon the plains
and
of
here was
Rajasthan.
created a unique blend of Indo-Portuguese
After many
centuries,
culture.
there was peace, which led to a resurgence
In
of
Goa,
art and culture.
I think the deepest encounter between the Western civilization and the Indian civilization took place in modern times. You must remember that in the context of India, the British came 200 years after the Portuguese.
We know from the prolific manuscript
and
paintings
whereas it
which
was a
survive
handful of them
that the tradition
in
of
India
painting
for
was
170
extremely
years
well developed in Rajasthan.
in the whole of India. Here
However,
was a tiny
there are no
little
mural
bit
paintings of the early period
of
which survive.
India
This is understandable since
the
there were
Portuguese
numerous
for
foreign
almost
raids
500
and
years.
invasions from the 11th
So
century
the encounter
onwards.
went very, very deep, and
There was
and
great
there was
plunder
definitely a kind
and
of
destruction of
synthesis that
temples
took
in
place.
this region. In keeping with the
On
ancient
25th
tradition,
November
these
1510,
would
the
surely
Portuguese
have housed
conqueror
a
Afonso de
great
Albuquerque
treasure
stood
of
at this
fine
spot
mural
and watched the
paintings.
sea battle between his forces and those of Adil Shah, the then ruler of Goa. When his ships won the battle and Goa on the western
This
coast
was a
of India
turbulent
was
period
finally
for art
his,
and culture in northern
he
India.
vowed to make on this spot a beautiful
In the
church
ancient
which
tradition,
stands still today.
paintings were made
Our Lady of the
only
Rosary.
on religious themes. One can understand that after
On the banks
11th
of the
century,
Mandovi River, with foreign
the
invasions
Portuguese
and
built
changed
the
rulers,
magnificent capital city.
religious
of
paintings
old
made
Goa
openly upon
or
the
Velha
walls
Goa would not have been encouraged. Old Goa became one of the most important ports in India. With the coming
It
of
also
Mughal
became
rule,
the nerve center
most
of
of
the
the
Portuguese
constantly
empire
warring
in Asia.
Rajput chieftains accepted
Portuguese
commercial
Mughal
interests and
sovereignty.
religious orders, covering the
The
area
period
from
of
the
Akbar
east coast of Africa
was one of great
to China and
transformation and
Japan
growth
were centered
in the
here.
plains of northern India.
He forged new bonds with the Rajputs by marrying their princesses.
This was a great commercial center, whether it was the precious
Unprecedented
stones and
cultural
spices which went to
confluence
Europe,
took place.
or whether it was the Arabian horses
On
which
the
the
one
Portuguese
hand,
traders
Mughal
sold to the
architectural
Indian
styles
kingdom of
evolved
Vijayanagar.
as Akbar
It all
built
went
palaces
through
and
here.
shrines for his Rajput queens. On the other hand, Rajputs who visited his courts took back to Rajasthan the grand manners and culture of the imperial court. The relationship
Mughal
between
times
Portugal
also
and Goa
brought prosperity
was not restricted
to
to
feudal
feudal
Rajput
Rajput chieftains, who were given
The Portuguese
high ranks
made
in the
this
administration
picturesque coastal
and even
land their
commander-in-chief in the Mughal army. They brought with them a new religion and culture. They believed it was their duty to convert the local people to Christianity, the period of peace, and to show them ushered in what they believed created the well-being
was the
and
true
leisure, which encouraged art. The many
The
Rajputs who
Portuguese
visited the Mughal
were filled with a
courts
fiery
were
zeal
also exposed
to
to new
establish their
subjects
faith all over
and
the
new
world.
styles of
They
painting
made huge
which
houses of
developed
God
there.
in this land. The idea was to
This was a
inspire and to
remarkable
convert
meeting
the local
of
people
historic
through
developments,
awe and grandeur,
which led to the
through
most
power and
prolific
majesty.
creation of mural paintings anywhere in India in the medieval period. Within a few square kilometers, many magnificent churches were built in Old Goa. In this rich, amidst its varied
waving
tapestry
palms,
of the paintings
Old
of
Goa
Rajasthan had the largest number
see
of
the
churches
constant interaction
of any city
and confluence
in Asia of two cultures.
Back in the 16th
On
century,
the one hand, there is the
Old
ancient
Goa
tradition
was one of the
of
bustling
mural painting
metropolises
coming
of the
from
world.
Ellora
It had
and
a
other great
population
sites.
of over 200,000. It
The
was
other
known
constant
as the
influence
Rome
in
of
the
the East.
murals of Rajasthan
Within a small
the entire
space, there
medieval
were so many
period
churches here
is that
that there are on
of the
record
Mughal
letters
court.
which were written to the King of Portugal
major
by the
changes in the
priests here,
subjects of Indian
saying
paintings
that their choirs
and fine
our
developments
choirs,
of technique
their bells
take place
and our
in the
bells.
Mughal courts.
There is cacophony here.
These are reflected constantly in the paintings of Rajasthan. The Basilica of Bon Jesus was built by the Jesuit order in 1585. The church is dedicated to the Bon Jesus, or the good, the chieftains of Rajasthan, now had the prosperity to indulge in the decoration of their courts, and yet they were subordinated to another court. The result is an ever-changing Saint Francis Xavier, who died on the 3rd of December 1552, is kept here, still miraculously intact.
Unlike in the Mughal courts, the tradition of mural painting was revived in Rajasthan. However, there was a change in the purpose of the painting.
Saint Francis Xavier left
In the
Portugal
ancient
to come to
tradition,
India and
the
to the
purpose
Far
of murals
East.
was sublime.
He
They
devoted
were
himself
supposed to
to the
transcend
cause of the
all
people
material
here
considerations
and died in that
and
service.
take man to a state which
He
was
was
close to
canonized by the
Brahmanan.
Church in Rome as a saint, and here in Goa, he was adopted
Whereas
as the
ancient
patron saint of
murals
the people.
had portrayed divine compassion and the inward look, now the portraits of chieftains and rulers began to be made upon the walls of the palaces of Rajasthan.
In St. Francis Xavier, the people of Goa saw someone who represented
Early
the
Indian
church
paintings depicted
and was
universal
also
themes.
one of them. Individuals were not important in these. The importance of the individual came up for the first time in Mughal paintings, and portraits were made in
Around
large
the
numbers
casket
containing the holy relics of the saint.
Portraiture was
Are
enthusiastically
paintings
adopted by
depicting
the
scenes
Rajputs.
from his life. Under the umbrella
It is
of
paintings
Mughal
of
of St. Francis
These
Xavier,
portraits were among
which
the
form the
many new ways
finest
they
body
found
of art
to
produced
assert their
by Goan
importance.
Christian painters.
The whole idea of portraying an actual person, painting a portrait of a living person as opposed to just painting a picture of a god or a religious story was quite new in the 17th century in India. It was something that was actually introduced, of course, by the
religious
Mughals,
ideas
who in
came here
turn
from Europe.
really got it from
But the
from
churches
Europe.
of Goa were made by Indian
And
hands,
it was when the
quite often
Rajput rulers
transformed
were
by the
serving
Indian heart.
at the Mughal court that they became
The
exposed to
craftsmen
this
who made these
whole
churches
idea
had their own
of
images in their
portraiture
mind.
and the whole concept
You
of what
see
you
the
might call
Basilica of
documentary
Montjesu. The saints are
painting,
made standing on lotuses,
instead of
much the way that
illustrating
Hindu
the
deities
religious
are made.
texts, which is something that had been going on already for several hundred, if not thousand years. Now they were thinking that they could start actually depicting
Indian craftsmen made
themselves
beautiful
and their
altar
colleagues
pieces,
and their families
which
in
represent the
actual
confluence of Indian
documents.
motifs and those of Europe. The message of the Lord was brought to the newly converted people through paintings which adorned the churches. The many floors of the Juna Mahal at Dungarpur are painted profusely. In these paintings we see the taste for opulence and the lavish use of gold.
Within these magnificent houses of God,
The figure of
a
the
great
ruler
treasure of religious art was
occupies a
created.
position of grand importance.
Paintings were brought from Lisbon and
and the
from
emphasis
Rome.
is on depicting
These
the
were
valor
used to
and
teach Indian
chivalry of the
painters
clan.
new subjects and a new manner of painting.
When it came to painting, they brought with them the art of the
There
fresco.
are religious themes too. The
which was
emphasis
very
is on
much
the
in
use
vogue
of
in,
bright and many
in-
colors.
in the Renaissance in
Indeed,
Renaissance
the overall
churches in
effect is
Europe.
one of overwhelming color and grandeur.
And painted canvases. In this case, the original ones were brought and were ordered and produced by Italian schools, the famous Italian schools of art of those days. The schools of
The
art which
culture and
produced people
magnificence
like,
of Rajasthan
like
comes alive
Michelangelo and
in the
Bernini
lake city
and,
of Udaipur. This was the
all
capital of the state of
painters of the
Mewar,
Renaissance.
which stoutly resisted Mughal rule in
So
the
they
16th
introduced
century.
all these
Finally,
aspects
they
of culture,
accepted
from
the
music to
overlordship of the
painting
Mughals and had cordial relations with
and
the Mughal court.
craftsmanship and construction.
Here in Goa, European
in the
techniques
Jagmandir,
and materials of
are
painting
remnants of some of
were introduced
Udaipur's
a long
finest
time before the
paintings.
British set up their first
art
musicians
schools in
and
India.
celestial dancers cover the ceiling. The Say Cathedral was completed in 1652. The paintings around the altars, the palace at
fine
Udaipur
example
is
of
one of the
paintings in the
grandest
churches of Goa.
structures in Rajasthan. Many of the rooms here have surviving mural paintings. Here, the Chitram Ka Burj is virtually an art gallery with paintings of the 18th
paintings of
century.
Goa
bring to us a reflection
This
of
is
traditions
also a
of
striking
painting
example
in Europe of the new style of murals in
This was the
Rajasthan.
period of the Baroque in Western art.
These are a departure,
A style
from the ancient
characterized by
tradition
drama
of wall
and
painting.
heightened emotion.
The ancient murals were made for public viewing from a natural viewing distance. These look like miniature paintings made upon the walls. Quite often, we see here they are made
in
at
the
heights
paintings of old
where it
Goa,
is difficult to see their
reflections
reflections
of
of the
the
Baroque and the earlier Mannerist styles of European
It is in the
paintings of the frolicking elephants, the artists
and other
used
animals,
colour,
form,
that the strength of the
and
traditional
diagonal
Indian
lines
painter
to make the paintings
is seen
realistic
at its best
and dynamic.
These
Dramatization
paintings also
became
provide
the principle
a
of the
window
paintings.
to the architecture and the world of those
The figures
times.
are
Starkly drawn out in a dramatic play of light and the contrast of dark shadows. The finest paintings
see
of
the
the Passion
palace
of the Suffering are in the Moti Mahal and Passion of Christ and the Apostles. In keeping with older traditions, these are made on religious themes. The Church of St. Francis of Assisi, built in 1527, the expressions in these
stands
paintings
in the main
have
square of Old
gentleness
Goa
and in the same compound as the Say Cathedral. The Havelis of Udaipur present a lively world of paintings. Here we see some of the finest paintings have simple
wood
colours
panels
and also
depicting
appear to be
portraits of
made for the
saints.
purpose of decoration. There is a simplicity and zest in these. They appear rooted in local folklore and older traditions. The Indian artist's empathy with animals provides the liveliest touch in these paintings. The ideas and stories of
Haveli
Christianity in the close by to the Indian artist Nathdwara has beautiful
However,
murals. The feeling of reverence towards a God
Again,
who loved all
these
of
show the
humanity
blend of themes
was
and
not new to
cultures
him. In the tapestry, while
of
he
medieval
laboured with the new
Rajasthan.
mediums of painting and with subjects which came from another land, the artist found himself at home in the depiction of gentleness and love upon the face of Christ. The palace at Bundi presents some of the best preserved Rajasthani murals of the 18th century. Here again, we see a profusion of subjects. Despite all the differences in the history and culture of Europe and India, the essence of religious feelings was the same. The paintings appear to be large-scale miniatures in Christian art. The walls. The feelings that were expressed towards Jesus Christ and towards the saints were exactly the same as the reverence of Indians towards their gods to that of contemporaneous miniatures makes it appear as though these could have been copied from actual miniature paintings. The convent and church of Santa Monica, dedicated to the mother of St. Augustine, presents us the view of a medieval gallery of paintings. This is the oldest and largest
of
nunnery
court life
in Asia, and religious ones
and is active
are
till
painted
today.
in a profusion, covering every inch of wall space.
He sowed God's word, and when the seed gave yield in the hearts of a few, he bought the
The convent was once completely covered with the most beautiful frescoes. Unfortunately,
Women are painted
most of them have been
in as
covered
natural
with
a
plaster
manner
as the men, and whitewashed. The simplicity of gentle expressions and the joyous spirit
Some
of life
paintings
are
which
seen
still
in
retain
the
their
best
original
of these
glory
Rajasthani
remain
murals. In the chapel of the convent.
was promised a kingdom if he gave away all, but he didn't have the vision
The nearby state of Kota, the colorful
also
paintings
has a
bring
long
alive
tradition of painting.
stories from the Holy Bible. The subjects are numerous and varied. They appear to reflect the many influences coming to the artists and their patrons. It is a world of kaleidoscopic color and a sense of the changing reality of those times. For the first time in Indian paintings, we see the expression of the beliefs of Christianity. Here we see religious themes. The paintings depict the miracles of faith and so many others, all made upon the same wall. As in the ancient Indian tradition of art, we see gentleness and overflowing love. Tucked away in the quiet of the basement of the nunnery of the Santa Monica, a wall on an upper floor of the Kota Palace mural paintings demonstrates the fine work of the Kota painters of the 18th century. Here we see a remarkable confluence of the styles and technique of the best of Mughal paintings and those of Rajasthan. As in the Hindu faith, in Christianity, the lives of hunting scene displays a luminous example of anatomy of all that is good and beautiful. Much more than that, the artist brings to us the dynamic flurry of urgent movements in the hunt and a sense of the life within. The lines are extremely sure and impart a sense of gracefulness to the painted figures of men and animals. This painted wall is one of the masterpieces of the murals of Rajasthan.
By 1545, we already have an official record that an Indian painter was being used to make fine portraits of the Portuguese viceroys. A great achievement,
the excellence of painting on the wall of the Kota Palace is seen again in the Bhojanshala of the Amer Palace near Jaipur. These exquisite drawings are on eternal religious themes. These are some of the earliest portraits that were painted in India. The portraits are painted in the styles that prevailed in Europe. We see the mastery of a new technique in depicting and a new manner of painting by the Indian artist. The artist appears to transcend himself. They come to us with that easy and natural sense which reminds us of the manner of ancient art. The twinkle in the eye of the elephant Father Rudolph with the sensitivity towards Father Montserrat of St. Paul's College in Old Goa were invited to the court of the Mughal Emperor Akbar. These are made in panels as guests of the emperor in Fatehpur and are small in scale for murals. They carried with them portraits and paintings on European and honest depiction of the painter before Akbar creates an intimacy between the viewer and the painting. These were among the earliest European influences which came to the mainstream of the Indian tradition of painting. The fort of Nagaur has a long history connected with the Mughals. The wall paintings here in the Hawa Mahal take us into European a world painting was different from the paintings of India. Both women are seen engaged in various activities and in its philosophical in a completely unself-conscious and easy manner. Goa's was the first meaningful. They are among the most beautiful experience of the Indian artist of Rajasthan. Styles of European painting. Rajasthan was on the major trade routes of days in the centuries to come. We see European influences coming to Indian Marwadis flourished through the schools of art that were set up by the British Havelis in the 19th century. we see how Indian painters
area of
assimilated
Sheikhavati
these influences has a concentration
and the
of 19th
impact that they
and
had
20th century
on the course
Havelis
of Indian
which are
painting.
profusely painted. The paintings here reflect the opulence of the Marwadis. They had made their fortunes at that time by trading
Under
with the
the
British
Portuguese,
East India Company. The Indian
who
painter
controlled the
learned to
Indian
paint
ports
in the realistic manner of the West. The interiors,
painstaking care
and
to depict
exteriors, light and
of the
shade,
Havelis are
and profusely
perspective
painted in a photographic manner. The cultural impact of the sudden exposure to European influences, whereas his tradition had taught him varied to present the sublime depiction of Brahman, a wide array of eternal bliss. The new tradition brought the poignant portrayals
These range
of the
from the
pain
eternal
in
life
religious themes to the new inventions which the traders would have seen in their visits to the major port cities. In the changing times of the 20th century, and with the impact of aggressive foreign cultures, the medieval history of Goa, we see the breakdown of the ancient traditions in the history of mural paintings. In Indian paintings too, the painters of ancient time when the artists tried to adopt an altogether different style and approach in their sublime paintings. The same gods are painted here in the 20th century in an entirely the best of old Goa's paintings, which reflects the confusion of society and sublime expression. Here was a true confluence
The murals of
of the art
Rajasthan
of India
come at an
and
important
Europe.
point in the history of Indian painting. After almost 500 years in which we do not have murals, the proud Rajputs are inspired to make paintings upon the wall. An ancient Indian tradition is resurrected. We also see the beginning of a new aesthetic which was deeply influenced by what was happening in the Mughal courts. The influence later spreads to the Pahadi hills and results in some of the most exquisite Indian paintings of the second millennium.
Zata